Unit 1. All right. Forward, march. Just the ones. Round to the position. Left. Halt. Twos. Forward, march. Left face. Shoulder your fire line. Left face. Order your fire. Order fire line. Order. Fire line.
Good morning. Thank you for coming here today. My name is Eleanor Gavazzi. I'm the Old Barrier Brown Commissioner for the town of Groton, Massachusetts. And we're here today to celebrate the return and the rededication of the Captain Joshua Bentley, Sons of the American Revolution grave marker. I'd like to start with introductions, please. As I call your name, could you please stand, step forward, or gesture to acknowledge your presence? My daughter, Amanda Gavazzi, Old Barrier Brown Commissioner, would you step forward, please? So we'll all stand here now for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Present. March. Shoulder. Fire line. Present. Arms.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now I'll begin the formal introductions.
Fire line. Order your fire line.
And just so you know, my daughter Amanda Gavazzi is approaching from the background there. I'm going to begin with introductions, and please acknowledge your presence when I call your name. Massachusetts Society Sons of the American Revolution State President, John A. Cunningham. Massachusetts Society Sons of the American Revolution State Secretary and Massachusetts Society Sons of the American Revolution Commander of the Colonel Knox Color Guard, Robert Bossett. Michigan Society Sons of the American Revolution Oak Chapter members that are present. Mr. John M. Rea, Second Vice President for the Michigan Society Sons of the American Revolution Oaks Chapter. Mr. Gerald Berkland, Past President of the Michigan Society Sons of the American Revolution, Commander of the Michigan Society Sons of the American Revolution Color Guard, and Michigan Society Sons of the American Revolution Grave Marking Officer. James Walker, President of the Michigan Society Sons of the American Revolution Oaks Chapter. Mr. David Moore, Chaplain of the Michigan Society Sons of the American Revolution Oaks Chapter and drummer for the Michigan Society Sons of the American Revolution Color Guard. Mr. Ray Lucas, genealogist for the Michigan Society Sons of the American Revolution Oaks Chapter. Massachusetts Society for the Daughters of the American Revolution, Paul Revere Chapter, Regent Mary Ellen Grogan, and Chapter Member Jo Ann Mackley. Mrs. Jackie Holmes, Senior State President of the Massachusetts Society of the Children of the American Revolution. Mr. James Holmes, National Corresponding Secretary for the Massachusetts Society of the Children of the American Revolution. Morgan Holmes, former Massachusetts State President and current National Merit Chairman of the Massachusetts Society of the Children of the American Revolution. Reese and Taryn Holmes, National Assistant Editors of the Children of the American Magazine, Reese and Taryn Holmes, National Assistant Editors of Children of the American Revolution magazine. Colonel Henry Knox, Regimental Color Guard, Commander Robert Boston. Acton Minutemen, Captain Steve Crosby. 6th Middlesex Regiment, Captain John Greenwood. Townsend Minutemen, Representative Linda Craig Bowes. Brave Registration Officer for the town of Groton, Massachusetts, Deborah Beale Normandin. Representatives of the Groton Minutemen, President Susan Roberts and her husband, Mr. Nick Roberts. Descendants of Joshua Bentley, Helen Donnelly Davis. Descendant of Joshua Bentley through marriage, Mr. James Walker. Descendant of Paul Revere, Mr. Sean Conley. And additionally, welcome all the wives, children, family members, and other guests present here today. We'd like to start with a greeting between the two societies, the Massachusetts Society of the Sons of the American Revolution and the Michigan Society for the Sons of the American Revolution. Mr. John A. Cunningham and Mr. Jerry Berkman.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Massachusetts Society, Sons of the American Revolution, it is with profound thanks, gratitude, that I welcome Jerry Berkman, the other distinguished members of the Michigan delegation, John Rea, and James Walker, traveling all this distance. Returning an artifact and a piece of history. The grave marker of Joshua Bentley. Mr. John Rea very astutely found at an antique shop in Arizona, apparently having been stolen from this grave sometime in the first third of the 20th century. Mr. Berkman, if you will, please step forward. The Massachusetts Society, thank you. Knows you with that gratitude.
Would we please have Mr. James Walker and Mr. Robert Buffett. This is for a presentation of acknowledgments between societies in exchange.
Welcome. We appreciate everybody being here. My name is James Walker. I'm the president of the Oaks chapter of the Michigan Society Sons of the American Revolution. And whether you believe in the hand of fate or the hand of the divine intervention of the Holy Spirit, many years ago when this marker for patriot Joshua Bentley went missing, a lot of series of events had to happen for this to come back to where it rightfully belongs. And so here we are today. Massachusetts Society receiving us all the documents here. I'd like to present them with the streamer of the Sons of the American Revolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have, in kind, we have one of these as well, but it was left inadvertently in the car. We will get it.
It's there. I've seen it.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we're going to have some speakers, and the first speaker I'd like to call forward is Mr. John Rayer of the Michigan Society Sons of the American Revolution, the gentleman who actually found relocated the marker. And I would like to call forward, to come forward please, his wife, Sue. You were with him when he found it, so you have to come forward for acknowledgement, please. Would you like to step up? I turn the podium over to Mr. John M. Rayer. Thank you.
Well, everybody's interested in how we came upon the market. And all I can say is my wife and I travel a lot. When we travel, we like to attend antique shops, just looking around, something to do. And this particular shop that we stopped at was a military shop. And I asked her, I says, well, let's go in here, see if they got anything to do with the Revolutionary War. She looked at me and she says, that was out east, it wasn't out here in Arizona. I says, well, you never know. So as we were browsing the shop, I found a few coins, didn't really see anything else. And as we were about to leave the shop, the store owner says to me, oh, by the way, 2 weeks ago, I was at an estate sale, and in a shed behind a trailer was this marker. Of course, he didn't know what it was. I immediately recognized what it was, asked him how much he wanted for it, purchased it from him, saw it had a name tag on it, was a little bit excited because at least I had a clue as to who it may have belonged to. I knew nothing about Joshua Bentley. As I did the research, I learned who he was and how important this marker was. Upon bringing it back home to my first chapter meeting, which was only about a week later, I just told my chapter, found this in Arizona, Massachusetts. I'd like to return it, but I would like it to be on behalf of the Oaks chapter. Past president was there at our meeting. He saw the marker. He was very excited about it, and he right away informed me that I needed to contact the state president of grave marking, Mr. Gerald Berkland. While in conversations with Gary Berkland, we started to realize how important this was. So from that point, we decided that this was to be given back from the Michigan Society to the Massachusetts Society. And we proceeded to contact Massachusetts. We ran into a conflict last fall because we were in the process of a grave dedication of our own. And then we followed through with it this spring. The date was today. And one of the things I want to say is for the last year since I've had this marker, I've always been said, well, it must have been coincidence or it must have been marker a year ago today, May 5th, 2017. It's being returned today, May 5th, 2018. Also, we discovered that the president of the Oaks chapter is a descendant through marriage, and the way that things have just fallen together through the past year, there was no planning on my part. It was a matter of sharing with the community back home in Michigan how important this marker was, a piece of history, and it had to come back. And that's really the story in a nutshell. Nothing fancy, nothing more than that. It was just simply there. I bought it, brought it home, researched it, planned to return it, and that's where we're at. But I do want to give you a little history because it became a sideline when I did this research on the history of the marker. And the marker, and I'm going to read from it because it was long, but this is short. The original marker used by the Sons of the American Revolution to designate the graves of Revolutionary War patriots was officially adopted by the Massachusetts Society at their annual meeting held on October 19, 1893 at Marblehead, Massachusetts. At that time, it was voted by the Massachusetts Society that 50 of the markers be purchased for the purpose of giving them to the towns which to place them on Revolutionary War veteran graves in their communities. The marker was officially adopted by the National Congress of the Sons of the American Revolution at the meeting on April 30th, 1894. The marker was described in the minutes of the meeting as being made of iron, priced at $1. Each, or a version made of bronze, was available for $3.50 each. Both versions featured a cross of St. Louis placed on the top of the bar. The cross was 1 foot in diameter, with a figure of a Minuteman in the center, surrounded by 13 stars. The center of each arm of the cross contains the letter inscription S.A.R. with the date of 1775. The marker measures 28 inches from the ground to the top of the cross. The patent for the marker was done in February 19, 1895, ran until 1902 by M.D. Jones and Company of Boston, Massachusetts. The use of the SARS grave marker appears to have caught on as a popular way for SARS chapters to honor their Revolutionary War patriot ancestors. At the annual SARS National Congress held in 1895, it was reported that 40 of the grave markers had been placed with the city of Boston alone. By 1903, it was reported by the National Society to that date 7,000 patriot graves had been marked using the original markers designed by the Massachusetts Society in 1893. Clearly, the Sons of the American Revolution had embraced the concept of marking all the patriot graves using the approved standard marker and had started to formalize the protocol for the grave marking ceremonies. That's the history of this one.
I'd like to present Massachusetts State President John A. Cunningham to read the epitaph of Abram Child. And I just want to make a note that the reason that the stone is in the condition that it is right now, this is black marble, and it's having a chemical reaction to the concrete base that it was set in after it toppled, probably 100 years ago. So what you see is a condition called sugaring, which has rendered it almost impossible to decipher. But fortunately for us, Dr. Samuel Green had the forethought to construct the book Groton Epitaphs, in which he sent a college student here to write down every epitaph and record it in this book that Dr. Green self-published. So we have a debt of gratitude to Dr. Samuel Green. So here you go. Thank you, Mr. Cunningham.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there are two graves of two heroes located here. There is, of course, Joshua Bentley. You'll be hearing more about him, I'm sure. But also present in this grave marker below us is Captain Abram Child. Born in Waltham in 1741 and died in Groton January 3rd, 1834, at 93 years of age. He entered the Army according to the gravestone in the French War. We call it the French and Indian War, and of course in Europe they call it the 7 Years' War. At the age of 17, General Amherst, the captain of Ticonderoga and Crown Point, in 1759. He rose to lieutenant, which is among the Minutemen and aided in the Concord fight. The Battle of Bunker Hill in 1775. Joined Washington in one of the Immortal Band, which crossed the Delaware December 25th, 1776, and turned the tide of the war in the victories of Trenton and Princeton. Detached to the north, he fought in the two battles of Stillwater and witnessed the surrender of Burgoyne in 1777. Rejoining Washington, he bore equally the frosts of Valley Forge and the heats of Monmouth in 1778. Detailed with General Wayne, who crowned his military career by heading the infantry as the oldest captain in the gallant capture of Stony Point, New York in 1779, where he received the only wound that marked his glorious service. That concludes. And that information is included on this stone that's now illegible. And we aim to do something about that. We can't let a public marker, this bit of history, disappear from the public view.
Thank you. I'd like to call forward grave registration officer Deborah Beal Normandin. Debbie and I, for the past 10 years, have been educating the 5th grade students of Groton Dunstable Elementary School on a walking tour of this old burial ground. And within these walls, there are 2 female patriots who belong to Prudence Wright's, Mrs. David Wright's bridge guard. While the gentlemen of the local areas were in Lexington and Concord, the women attempted to disguise themselves in men's outfits, thus our attire. Because usually people only had 2 articles, 2 outfits, their work clothes and their Sunday best. So our outfits are self-made, self-constructed, as we interpret the patriot spirit of these women who stood in their husband and son's absence. The story of the bridge guards, and Susanna Quayles is down here, her grave is marked with a flag. She died at age 25. Job Shattuck's wife, Susanna Shattuck, she was 35 at the time she went out and guarded the bridge. She died at age 63. Debbie is my human prop. They didn't have muskets. I don't want to poke you. You know how to do it. All right. So the women went out at night in the men's absence, and they disguised themselves under the cloak of darkness to make them look like they were men. Debbie is the average height of a person, a man, in 1775. They were only around 5 feet to 5'4". They were very small. So what was your line, Debbie? Do you remember?
Halt! Who goes there?
Stop and state your business.
Stop and state your business.
And they detained a spy who was carrying dispatches from Canada, that had made their way from Canada to Hollis, New Hampshire, and then attempted to get through Groton. So that's why we're in this attire. We are Prudence Wright's bridge guards.
'Tis I, your cousin.
Oh, he tried to schmooze his way across the bridge, but the women wouldn't let him go. That was,
It's all coming back.
It's all coming back. Okay. So thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I couldn't let the day pass without acknowledging Debbie. She's been such a good soul with that. So I would like to read you a little bit about Joshua Bentley, and it's been a pleasure doing research about Mr. Bentley. I feel like I almost personally know him, and I'm very delighted that there are actual physical descendants of Mr. Bentley here today. It's compared to Abram Child's epitaph, which obviously was written by a child who had a deep history of his parents or her parents' military service. Mr. Bentley didn't have that luxury of having somebody write something for him. On the back side of the stone, it merely says, and I quote, "Sacred to the memory of Joshua Bentley of Boston, who died at Groton, April 15, 1819, at age 95 years old." That's all it reads. We had to search for the rest of his history. And excuse me if I get emotional. Joshua Bentley was born January 16, 1726 in the North End of Boston, Massachusetts, to Thomas and Susanna Townsend Bentley. In 1775, Joshua was 49 years old and well established in his life. In colonial days, the North End was known as the Island of North Boston. This area was a peninsula filled with wharves, warehouses, stylish mansions, and prosperous merchants. This was a tight-knit community where families had intermarried generationally. The 191-foot steeple of the Old North Church rose to the heavens above North Boston. Paul Revere was the bell ringer at this church when he was 15 years old. By the 1750s, the North End had become a hub of commercial and intellectual activities. And in my research, I had found that of the 13 original colonies, the Massachusetts Bay Colony imported 10 times as many books as any of the other colonies. 10 times. Joshua Bentley maintained the address at 78 Prince Street in North Boston for decades. Lieutenant Governor Thomas Hutchinson also lived in the area, just around the corner at Garden Court. Joshua Bentley would have been witness to the earliest days of colonial descent. He was more than likely part of it, given his trusted association with his neighbor and friend, Paul Revere, and the other Sons of Liberty. Dr. Joseph Warren was the head of the Masons and played a leading role in patriot-American organizations in Boston in the early days of the American Revolution. He was a regular visitor to North Boston. Paul Revere was also a member of the Masons and was heavily influenced politically by his friendship with Dr. Warren and James Otis. James Otis was an early advocate for the patriot views against British policy that led to the American Revolution. His catchphrase, "Taxation without representation is tyranny," became the basic patriotic position. Joshua Bentley was obviously influenced as well through his association with Paul Revere. Dr. Joseph Warren enlisted Paul Revere and William Dawes on April 18, 1775, to leave Boston and spread the alarm that the British garrison in Boston was setting out to raid the town of Concord and arrest rebel leaders John Hancock and Samuel Adams. It was no accident that Paul Revere had assistance from his trusted friends and political associate, Joshua Bentley and Thomas Richardson. Thomas Richardson is the other man who was in the rowboat with Paul Revere and Joseph Warren. These men were part of a greater plan that had been laid out long before the date. Dr. Warren was later assassinated 2 months later at the Battle of Bunker Hill by the deliberate action of a British officer who shot him point blank in the head. Dr. Joseph Warren was the go-between between John Hancock and the Sons of Liberty. So they basically took out the middle person, hoping to disrupt the Patriot cause. Dr. Joseph Warren was wearing his best clothes. The men were told not to bring any identifying papers with them, for fear of being hung for treason if they were captured. Dr. Joseph Warren realized he was a marked man. He had his will in his pocket, so they could identify his body. He was 34 years old, and he left 2 young children behind. Joshua Bentley was a shipwright by occupation, according to the diary of his son, Reverend William Bentley, who was born in 1769. A shipwright is a person who builds or repairs ships. Later in life, he became the inspector of boards, shingles, and lumber in Boston. Joshua Bentley married Elizabeth Payne, whose name is also on the marker, the daughter of William Payne, a wealthy miller and a property owner in Boston. At one time, perched on a hill in North Boston, there was a wooden milling windmill that overlooked a milling pond. And when Joshua Bentley and Elizabeth Payne married on March 3rd, 1757, they thought they were settling into what they thought would be an uneventful life. They would have 11 children together, not all of them surviving infancy or young adulthood. In 1775, they would have had the following 7 living children. William, age 16, who was later Harvard University educated, a diarist and the minister in Salem, Massachusetts. Joshua Jr., age 14 in 1775. He was later described by his older brother William in the diary as captured by the British and dying as a prisoner at age 17 in Halifax, Nova Scotia, May 19, 1777. He had a son Thomas, age 11, a son John, age 9, a daughter Mary, age 7, who later married a Mr. Robert Dawes. Elizabeth, age 6, and Susanna, age 1 year, and it's Susanna Bentley Woolley Child, whose name is on the marker here. They would have 2 additional children born during the Revolution. Caleb, who was born in 1777 and died in 1777, and Samuel, born in 1779, who survived to old age, who was also a shipwright and was buried in Groton. Joshua Bentley's mother, Susanna Bentley's headstone, still stands in the Copp's Hill burial ground along with those of other family members. His mother died in 1748 when Joshua was 15 years old. She was 41. We assume Joshua Bentley's son, Joshua Jr.'s body was never given the decency of being returned from Halifax, where he died a prisoner. We don't know if he had signed up for military service, or if he was pressed into service, or if he was just taken off a ship and held in Nova Scotia, but we do know that he was a prisoner. So when we talk about Joshua Bentley, he had a lot to lose, and yet he risked it all on April 18, 1775, when he rowed his friend Paul Revere across the Charles River to make his ride. But it didn't stop there. We can find Joshua Bentley's name in the volumes of the Massachusetts Society, the Massachusetts Soldiers and Sailors in the American Revolution, where he is listed as the lieutenant and a captain. He is listed as being the clerk of the laboratory, which was located at Castle Island in Boston, near the old British named Fort William. Joshua Bentley was associated with the laboratory from 1778 until 1783. So basically, once he got word of his son's death in 1777, this man became an activist, very active. From that point forward, 1778 to 1783. He was literally the main support person who supplied much needed ammunitions and supplies to George Washington's army. Captain Joshua Bentley was appointed clerk at the laboratory in charge of making ammunitions and weapons for the Continental Army, under the direction of Colonel William Burbeck and answerable to the Honorable Board of War. According to his son William's diary, both his father Joshua Bentley and younger brother John Bentley worked in the ammunitions warehouse in Boston. This is collaborated in Massachusetts Soldiers and Sailors. Looking at documents obtained from the Massachusetts State Archives, we can see Joshua Bentley's steady, concise handwriting and signature. Joshua repeatedly made requests for sundry materials, such as 50,000 musket balls in various sizes, files for the armorer, flour to glue the cartridges, coal for the blacksmiths, black powder, wood to make the shipping crates, nails, materials to make carriages, and more paper for himself so he could write continued notes to the Board of War. Obviously, he needed to write a lot of notes. He also kept the records of who reported for duty at the laboratory. And when they rotated out, this no doubt was because of the dangerous nature of the job, being around forges with fire and black powder, which was explosive. No wonder the laboratory was located on an island. Joshua Bentley's youngest daughter, Susanna, married David Child, the son of Abram Child. And this is how they came to be recorded on the same marker. Joshua Bentley's epitaph does not tell us much. But when we look deeper, he commands our respect and deserves to be recognized as one of America's Revolutionary War heroes. Thank you.